Barbara Kruger began creating art at a young age. By the 1960s, she was a commercial graphic designer before art director of Mademoiselle magazine. She utilized the skills learned in her field to create her own pieces. These are both pieces by Barbara Kruger when she became very prominent during the early 60s. She used the skills learned at the magazine, like type and layout and layering images, to create art visually similar to advertisements used to sell goods. Her aim was to expose deceptive practices in marketing at the time, like subliminal and direct messaging. Her classical design training is critical to her body of work as it serves as the basis for her attention-grabbing aesthetic. Alongside her bold color choice, she uses large size to connect with a public audience. Even the text is laid out in a way that the reader must take some time to read it, stacked or juxtaposed across the composition. By the 1970s, a feminist art movement was making its way throughout the nation. A prominent subject of the feminist art was the notion of the male gaze, which you saw in her first piece. Other notable artists of the time were the Guerrilla Girls and Cindy Sherman. The Guerrilla Girls would post mostly text about controversial topics throughout the city in guerrilla suits during the 80s, while Cindy Sherman used her photography skills to examine gender roles and binaries in American popular culture. Many female artists of the time were of the same mind, that art is still a site for resistance and for telling of various stories, for validating certain subjectivities we normally overlook. I'm trying to be effective, to suggest changes, and to resist what I feel are the tyrannies of social life on a certain level, said Barbara Kruger, and this was a time of social resistance. During this era of pop art and design, text became a prominent asset in contemporary art. Many cultural theorists have asserted that language is one of the most powerful vehicles for internalizing stereotypes and conditioned roles. You'll see that Kruger titles much of her work in the work itself. This is a direct exchange between the viewer and the artist, giving a specific idea to contemplate while sparking ideas of deeper meaning. The idea about the male gaze piece is that once a woman is aware of it, she can repel it, reversing the power structure and gaining independence. This is all right out in the open for the viewer to see. What's really amazing is what more some may interpret from the piece. Kruger's work is a fine example of semiotics in art. She uses popular icons and signifying text to inspire deeper conversation on concepts. Thus, a sign has successfully occurred. Today, Kruger is a professor at UCLA and still creates controversial pieces in her own distinct style. Her works evolved with social norms and politics, remaining relevant and contentious in her own earnest manner.